KKCR Hanale KAQA Kilauea. And I would be a little remiss if I didn't do this. Thinking of you, Larry. It is that time on the Monday Mixed Plate Radio.
Traffic lights and railroad tracks. How would they feel about this smart city life? Tears would come from each other's eyes as they would start to realize that our land is in great, great danger now.
And this Hawaii Affordable Living radio show is made possible by KKCR's sustaining members in partnership with Kauai Mold, Water and Fire and Koloa Zipline.
Aloha, everybody. Kauai Mold Water Fire, a family-owned and operated business specializing in 24/7 water damage cleanup, mold remediation, and fire damage. For more information and estimates, 808-635-8100 or visit hawaiimold.com.
Koloa Zipline is proud to support Kauai Community Radio. Koloa Zipline offers guided ziplining tours on Kauai's South Shore. Participants can take in mountain and jungle views of historic locations while riding in a variety of zipline styles. Guests can expect to learn some Kauai history as well as zipline acrobatics. More information at koloazipline.com.
The views and opinions expressed during this program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily represent those of KKCR, its board of directors, staff, volunteers, or underwriters.
Go and mahalo for listening today on this Memorial Day. Lay, how are you doing today?
Doing well. It's a beautiful day, and it's a day off, and it's a day of memory and honor and respect.
Thank you. And we're going to be featuring two candidates for District 16, and that's going to be our current Representative Luke Evslin and his challenger, David Hazlebeck. Lay, tell us a little bit about what these two gentlemen are going to be talking about.
Okay, well, I was able to coordinate an interview, so we have recorded it, which we will be playing, and they introduced themselves, and I introduced them, and it was an interesting topic. It's a very big district, actually, that covers an awful lot of areas: Wailua, Hanama, Puhi, Līhu, Omao, and Kapaia.
And so Luke and David are both Democrats running for that open seat, or not open seat, the seat that Luke currently holds.
Correct.
And we'll get a chance in about 20, let me look, thanks Radio Annie for breaking this up for us. In about 30 minutes, we'll take a pause. I'll play a couple messages. If you have phone calls or you have comments, we'll take some calls. We probably won't pause the interview, but we'll have time at the end of the show to take some open calls, questions about the content, the issues that members of District 15, whether you live in the
16.
homesteads, District 16, that live in the homesteads or live in Hanamalu or live in Puhi and thereabouts. What are the big issues for you, whether it's traffic, housing, or recreation?
Right. It even includes airports as well.
And major shopping areas.
Yes, indeed.
There we
Yes,
go.
indeed.
So,
I learned a lot from this session.
Lay, here we go. We'll hopefully hit the right button at the right time, and it sounds like this.
Is a columnist focused on land use and energy. He's a graduate of Kauai High School, UH Manoa, and USC, and he's also an avid paddler, photographer, and hiker. David Hazlebeck first came to Kauai as a teenager and moved here full-time in 2018 to run his family's algae farm. He now leads Global Algae Innovations and is focused on affordability, economic opportunity, and the future of local families. Both candidates. He now leads Global Algae Innovations and is focused on affordability, economic opportunity, and the future of local families. Both candidates bring deep ties to Kauai and different experiences in public service, business, family, and community life. So one reason we wanted to host this conversation is because many residents don't fully understand the role of the State House representative. These are the people we bring our concerns to, whether it's housing, flooding, infrastructure, agriculture, or cost of living, and they help shape legislation and advocate for solutions at the state level. So their roles include listening to constituents, us, concerns, introducing bills, shaping legislation, advocating for district needs, securing funding and priorities, working with state agencies, serving on committees, negotiating policy with the Senate and governor. So it's a lot. And District 16 has different communities inside one district, and they all are facing different realities. So the district is covering Wailua, Hanamaulu, Puhi, Līhu, Omao, and Kapaia. And you can imagine those of us who live in these areas, we all face very different kinds of things. And so it includes things like urban and service center pressures, rural and ag land concerns, tourism spillover, workforce housing stress, infrastructure bottlenecks, longtime local families, newer arrivals, state facilities and commercial corridors, flood-prone zones, and agricultural identity. If that's not enough. Okay, so that is a lot. So We'll start off with things such as, how does a District 16 representative translate community concerns into actual legislative actions? And we'll toggle back and forth. You can choose back and forth who goes first on the questions. Who would like to go first on that question?
You can jump in if you want.
Okay, great, thank you.
It definitely starts, like you said, with we have to listen to what the community is saying. And so that really starts with being present, being in the community. I've been going door to door already, talking to people about what issues they're facing right now. And then once you hear those issues, you actually have to then come up with solutions for those that make sense for the community. And in this position, you really have to make sure that it makes sense statewide, or else it really won't have any chance of going anywhere. And so coming up with those solutions that then can be addressed through legislation.
Okay. Luke, did you want to address that one too, or we'll just jump to the next?
Yeah, I can address it. So in general, I see our primary job as solving problems. So often, as David said, those problems are going to come from the community. It's things that we're hearing in the community, and then the work of sort of public policy is like identify a problem and then try and see if there's a legislative solution to it. Our primary job is introducing and passing legislation, which is really changes to state law. We have no authority to, we don't administer those laws, right? The governor and the mayor of the counties are going to be administering laws and their respective department heads. So all we can really do is try and change the law in a way that's going to help. So you can't always solve problems through policy, but you often can find that the root of problems are going to be rooted in policy. So that can be sometimes making a new law. Most often what I'm looking at is trying to, sometimes it's like taking away a law. We can delete laws also through that work.
Wow.
So it's identify a problem. Sometimes, for example, like 2 years ago, somebody was trying to get a building permit as an owner builder, and they went through that process, and then they had to sign an affidavit that says that you cannot lease that building out for a year after it's completed, right? So that's like kind of a crazy issue. Somebody wants to build a home, they can't ever like rent that out if they're trying to do an ADU or something. So identify the problem, see where is this problem rooted. Turns out there's a section in statute that clearly says that, and then the legislation was to just delete that section in statute. So that kind of example happens all of the time, and so every year, between now, our legislative session just ended, and next January, it's sort of identifying these problems and seeing what types of policy we can develop to try and solve these problems.
Okay. So what community concerns deserve legislative attention right now? And you can start, Luke, and then we'll jump to David on that one.
For me, it's housing. We have obviously lots of problems on Kauai. But I think housing is at the center of these in lots of ways. I subscribe to this like housing theory of everything, which truly puts housing at the center, right? Like cost of housing is pushing, an exodus of residents away from Hawaii. Hawaii is losing population because of it. That's creating a worker shortage across Hawaii. We have a dire teacher shortage because of the housing crisis. We have a shortage of people to help those who are aging because of it. We have a homelessness crisis. We know that the cost of housing correlates with homelessness, right? Higher housing costs lead to higher rates of homelessness. It's really hard to start a business in Hawaii because if you can't afford your rent, you're not going to take the risk on starting a business. And then those who haven't moved away, who are trying to make it, like my entire generation, everybody I know is working 2 or 3 jobs just to stay in Hawaii. And that causes all kinds of other stressors on families, right? And I think it's a contributor to domestic violence when families are really stressed struggling to afford their mortgage or rent. And then beyond that, right, land and how we develop it is also impacting our traffic, right? We have a major traffic problem on Kauai because we have 60% of the jobs in Līhu and only 25% of the housing. And so everybody's commuting back and forth to Līhu. So like how we develop land really impacts our traffic. It's really hard to make it as a farmer, partially because the cost of ag land is so high. Part of the reason the cost of ag land is high is because there's development pressure on that ag land, right? So when we have homes competing with farms, the homes are often going to win because, homes can sell for a lot of money. So it's contributing to, food security issues on Kauai. And then, and lastly, like, is also infrastructure. We spend a lot of money on infrastructure. We have our Department of Water has just come out saying we need $1.3 billion in water improvements just to maintain our aging infrastructure. We have the same issue with our roads, right? We have lots of deferred maintenance on our roads and bridges on Kauai, our wastewater. And part of that is because when we develop our housing in a sort of a spread out manner, that's all really expensive to maintain that infrastructure. So like land and how we develop it is the root cause of all of these issues. And it's why I'm in office, is to try and figure out ways to reduce the cost of housing and develop land in a way that helps create vibrant communities and, helps preserve agricultural land, helps reduce the amount people have to drive, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not always easy to do, but I think that's the big vision.
Right. Well, you're singing our tune, housing. It's all about housing. It is the core, focus, because when someone is housed securely, it solves a whole lot of problems, affordably, of course, right? Yeah. David, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, that'd be great. So I agree with Luke that housing is a major issue. Sadly, it's only become worse over the last several years in terms of affordability. Housing affordability has declined at the fastest rate in our history over the last several years. And so definitely that's a major issue. However, I view things more of kind of a jack of all trades type of approach. And so number one thing for me is cost of living. I feel like cost of living is mostly impacted by, or is heavily impacted by taxes. And I'm very for decreasing taxes rather than increasing them like we've seen proposed in the legislature lately. And that includes things like property taxes, where if we can give relief to people that actually live here and work here with a few extra $1,000s in their pocket, the state can easily afford it. And so that's something that will dramatically change people's lives. Things like GE taxes for essential things like medicine and food, it'd be huge to eliminate the taxes on those. And then looking at diversifying our economy, like Luca mentioned, farming's really hard here. I know firsthand. I'm an algae farmer. It's extremely hard to make it work. And so looking at policies that can help increase farming, increase other aspects of our economy rather than just tourism, I think will help a lot. And then other kind of big issues I see are our state's 42nd ranked education system. That's the only state in the nation with one school district. I feel like I could use a lot of help and reform right now. And then the last one is just government transparency. Obviously, they're looking into right now the $35,000 bribe case, and I think that's just the tip of the iceberg in Hawaii, sadly. And so, doing things to increase government transparency, I think, is huge.
Jade, did you want to frame your question?
Yes. I think going back to what you said, David, about looking at things from a more systemic point of view, like cost of living, education, farming. My question would be that how do we create opportunities for young people on Kauai when it comes to education, the workforce, and housing? What are the ways or policies that you're thinking about that would really be helpful to address? It's hard for one policy to address multiple spheres, but sometimes people can be creative that if they frame it in this way or go about it in a very creative manner, then it can affect like multiple sectors at the same time.
Yeah, so for me, the bills that I would be looking to introduce all revolve around affordability and quality of life issues, and with those, then things that promote sustainable local businesses. One specific bill that one specific action that I think would be helpful is putting up some sort of housing at Kauai Community College. I know they just received money to study looking into putting up housing at a community college. We all pay taxes. We all pay into the UH system. KCC is part of that system. And yet there's nowhere for us to house professors, and even other teachers in our community could be housed there potentially to attract better teachers to our island. And so not only does it impact then what teachers are coming into our community, but it also impacts the housing side of it. And so it's something that personally I don't feel like we need a prolonged study to figure out how to put housing at a college. I think that's been done many, many times nationwide. And so really action on that rather than just studying it.
I thought that was being implemented actually by KCC.
Yeah, so right now they have the money to fund the study for it.
Oh,
and
okay.
And then the initial preliminary design.
It's UH. They're going to study it, okay, for a long time. Guaranteed. And then it has to go through the Board of Regents, and they only meet every now and then. Yeah, it's quite a process. I got familiar with Kavaikini that's on the KCC property. Yeah, process. Luke, did you want to address Jade's question as well?
Yeah, I can address it. One thing, just briefly, David mentioned that there's proposals to increase taxes in the last legislative session. I want to be clear that there was historic tax relief offered in the 2024 session. We are facing sort of dire fiscal headwinds currently as a state, right? There's gas prices have gone up significantly. Tariffs have significantly increased costs across state government. We have a significant reduction in federal resources for our state. This has led to a lot of positions that were previously federally funded no longer are. There's Medicaid and Medicare and SNAP cuts across government. So we are looking at footing the bill for a lot of this stuff and trying to ensure that we're not cutting social services. And so what the legislature did this last year, with that historic tax relief that was offered 2 years ago, for families under $350,000, right, that relief continues, and the bottom two brackets actually have expanded tax relief, so there'll be continued tax cuts, resulting in $15,000 worth of savings over 5 years, I believe, for the average family. The tax cuts were paused for families making over $350,000, and then there was a new bracket added for those making $1 million plus. So taxes did go up for those making $1 million plus. But for working class families in Hawaii, we're certainly preserving or expanding those historic tax relief measures. Regarding KCC, the money is for planning and infrastructure. There's $15 million there for workforce housing at KCC that is in process. It's not just planning money. I mean, it's not just for a study. And in terms of housing, though, for me, all of my focus since 2018, since I first served on the Kauai County Council, has been housing. And really housing, I view it as like 4 buckets. There's regulatory reform, making it easier to build housing, right? This is through zoning reform, making it easier to build ADUs, also building code reform, just trying to reduce the building code requirements. I've been championing and successfully passed measures on both fronts. Next would be infrastructure, ensuring that we have the funding for infrastructure, right? On Kauai, our zoning is actually pretty loose, right? Most families actually put 4 units on a single lot. The primary barrier is going to be wastewater. If you don't have sewer, then you can't do those. We need to build a whole lot more high density housing in the center of Līhu town, I believe, and we need the infrastructure to do so. So infrastructure is sort of bucket number 2. Trying to come up with funding mechanisms for that infrastructure, which this year we passed through a bill, the companion to a bill I introduced, a measure which will provide for bond financing for this in a way that's done across the country in every state, basically, except for Hawaii, which is, it's known as tax increment financing elsewhere. It's a way to pay for infrastructure based on future revenue, property tax growth in that area without a property tax increase on the residents of that area. So it's like the primary funding mechanism for infrastructure, which we have never implemented in Hawaii, because our state constitution prohibits it. So infrastructure is number 2, financing is number 3. This is part of why the housing crisis has gotten so bad over the last 5 years. It's just cost of financing has gone through the roof, right? Interest rates are really high. So projects that previously would have penciled no longer are penciling. Also through a bill I introduced last year, we created what's called the mixed income sub-account in the Rent House Revolving Fund. This is providing low interest financing for housing development for working class families. So traditionally in Hawaii and across the country, most state and federal resources go to very low income housing. This is 60% AMI and below. This is incredibly important that we subsidize this form of development. But in Hawaii, as we know, like most people don't qualify for that subsidized housing, but then they make too much to earn money to buy a home on the open market. So we created this fund to provide very low interest financing for 60% to 140% AMI. This is going to be most of our blue collar professions, most of our unionized jobs in Hawaii. And it's the first of its kind in the nation. And I believe we have $100-ish million in financing currently going towards that. And then lastly is going to be ensuring that when we are building housing, that housing is going towards local residents. So there's a couple of ways to do this. One is discouraging vacation rentals. Right when I was on the council, I was a champion of trying to increase taxes on vacation rentals as a way to discourage them. While in the legislature, I championed a bill which gave counties the authority to phase out vacation rentals. This is the tool that Maui is using to phase out vacation rentals. And then in this last session, I passed a bill which reduces regulatory barriers and fees for housing developments where 80% of the units are deed restricted to be occupied by a local resident forever. So in order to qualify to buy one of those, you have to be living in Hawaii at the time of purchase. So this is a way both incentivizing local residents and trying to discourage, vacant ownership and vacation rentals is the basic force thrust that I've been working towards.
Excellent. Yes, it's like our Ho'omaluhia Community Land Trust with the 299-year consecutive leases to ensure as permanently affordable living as we can. It's I think we're leading the pack on that one. We're still formulating everything, but it's a way to house the local folks and who are the workforce here on the island. I was interested to know what makes legislation succeed or fail at the Capitol, because I know a great idea can come up and then it has to go from one place to the other. And any thoughts on that? And you, Luke, you can take that, and then we'll transfer that question to David too. So what makes it succeed or fail? I mean, is it just rolling the dice or what?
I've been in the legislature now since 2023, and I feel like that's the question everybody's trying to figure out. Right, it can be sometimes feel a little bit random, but in general, there's kind of two types of legislation that passes. One is legislation which is common sense and has no objections. So like I passed a bill this year to allow water catchment on all lots. There was no opposition to that. There wasn't actually a whole lot of support, but that bill just kind of sailed through because
that's interesting.
Yeah, and it'll actually do a lot for Kauai.
That's
as a quick
a big
aside, right?
deal.
Kauai currently, if you have a water meter on site, they won't allow you, and there's a water meter restriction, which a lot of areas of Kauai have water meter restrictions. So you can get your first meter, but you couldn't get a second one for like an ADU.
Right.
And the water department, if you try and do catchment, they'll say, no, since you already have a meter on site, you can't do catchment. This will actually force them to allow you to do catchment for that second unit. So it's huge for Kauai, yet it kind of sailed right through the legislature and ended up, passing, and hopefully it'll get signed into law, largely because there was no opposition and it's common sense. For most impactful legislation, though, especially as it goes through the process, especially on housing, like housing is always really controversial. If we're doing things to make it easier to build, there's going to be existing, stakeholders or communities that are going to push against that.
Right.
And so to pass housing legislation, you really need a pretty large stakeholder group of like advocates and community members and even home builders to be pushing for legislation. And so that's kind of the work that I generally do over the summer, is to try and put together these like a diverse coalition to try and push for legislation. Because really to pass a controversial bill, it takes lots of people knocking on legislator doors. I have camped out in different senators' offices, begging them to hear the bill. Come on, it's a good bill, please hear it.
Wow.
The other thing you have to do is be willing to really hear and understand legislators' concerns. So if somebody, say a committee chair doesn't want to hear a bill, to be able to sit down and work through it with them and to try and see if there's ways to make the bill more palatable for them. So that's really the job of being a legislator, is sort of this art of figuring out how to get stuff through.
Oh, wow. Yes, that's a lot. And you said, and hopes that it gets through. So that's where that camping out and connecting and talking. Yeah. And is that where writing to your representative and, where we're asked to chime in, is that a big piece of it too?
Yeah. And if I could, so to add one more part is 3,000 bills get introduced every year in the legislature, and 10% of those pass, right? So that's this year, I think we passed 250 bills. So for good reason, most bills die, because we want to be very careful when we're changing state law. It's a big deal to change the law. And so that's why the process is built to be so hard, right? To pass, it's got to go through both the House and the Senate. It's got to go through 3 committee hearings in each. So that's 6 different hearings, 3 separate votes on the floor. So that's 6 floor votes. and then gets sent to the governor. So there's tons of sort of veto points for all of this because we want to make sure that anything that passes really, is a matter of like, statewide concern and important. And to your point, yes, that's why like these calls to action are so important. So when I say like building a diverse coalition of people to help support a bill, some of that is like, we're reaching out to everybody before every hearing saying, get your testimony in, show that there's this groundswell of support for this. So individual testimony makes a huge difference.
Huh. That's good to know. Did you want to chime in on that, David?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not at the Capitol yet, and so I obviously don't have nearly as much insight personally as Luke does. I think that's a good thing, though, because it means I don't come with any prior baggage from prior years to where either you ruffle feathers the wrong way and all of a sudden the person just has a personal issue or whatnot. But ultimately, I think success comes from eliminating complacency. I think that it takes practical solutions. Like Luke said, the common sense bills make it through rather rapidly. And then strong relationships for sure seem to matter there, especially with the chairs of the committees. Like Luke was saying, if the committee chair doesn't want to hear a bill, then they just don't hear it. And so it's a rather fascinating process that we allow them to have so much power in it. But that's how it is. And this year I watched the legislature every single day on YouTube that they were in session so that I could learn a lot. And so I'm committed to doing the hard work to make it work once I get there.
Yeah, it is complex. It really is complex. Well, we were talking about the various districts and, for example, Wailua. When we just hear that's within your all District 16, Wailua. But where in Wailua? What is included in Wailua? Because it's
listening to Kauai Community Radio KKCR Hanale, KAQA Kilauea, K224CQ Anahola, and K205 FM Honolulu. This is the PAL Show, and we are interviewing Representative Luke Evslin and his challenger David Hazlebeck, and we'll return to the conversation.
And then going the other way towards how far over does it go?
Yeah, so there's a hairpin turn on Olohana that where there's a river. I think there's a river that runs through right there, and that's where the line is on the north side.
Okay, it's an unusual breakdown when you hear Wailua. So does that include cocoa palms or Wailua Nui area?
So let's see. I don't believe it includes cocoa palms, but that also is under county jurisdiction right now. Well, the county's taking a look at that anyways. I know they just went to executive session this week in their meeting, so I'm sure they'll be addressing that appropriately, hopefully.
And then so it probably includes the Smiths and the boat harbor.
Yes, it does include that side. Yeah, so everything south of the river is included all the way down to Omau.
Okay. And then towards the other direction of Kamalu, towards the Olohana side, it kind of cuts off there, it sounds like. Yeah. We get to see a drawing of that because I don't know, I think I'm out of that district then. I'm not sure. Well, there in Wailua specifically, there's tourism pressure, clearly cultural preservation, river, ocean, and environmental concerns, and also traffic. So on that topic, Wailua experiences significant visitor pressure while also remaining an important cultural area. How do we better protect quality of life for residents? And Luke, you can take this one.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Wailua Homesteads. I lived there till I was 18. I lived through the daily struggle of, driving that corridor. I went to school in the Hui. I got a district exemption, so I went to Kauai High. And so I think number one concern for Wailua residents, at least those who live in the Hui, is traffic through that corridor. On days when the contraflow goes down, especially, that it can really back up. That is something that we are only in the planning phase for, trying to expand the highway to 4 lanes through that corridor. But I think, from a broader perspective, like we're not going to solve that traffic issue by adding lanes. I do think that we still need to providing more housing in Līhu, at least give somebody an option. If they want to live close to where they work, then they should be able to have that option, whereas right now that option doesn't exist. So that's one, is traffic. Number two, from a tourism perspective, I used to coach paddling for years at Puhi Canoe Club on the Wailua River. The river for years has been overcrowded with kayaks. So there are state rules which prohibit rental kayaks on the river on weekends. The problem is that only only on-site vendors essentially were complying with these rules. If somebody off-site was renting a kayak, then somebody could go pick up that kayak and drive it into the river and use it on the river unrestricted. So these off-site guys have this advantage, leading to overcrowding on the weekends when there was supposed to be no rental kayaks. So last year we passed a bill which says that every single rental kayak on the river has to be affixed with a registration sticker and ensuring that they are abiding with the same rules as everybody else is. So this went into effect a couple weeks ago. From what I've heard, it's working. There shouldn't be any rental kayaks on the weekends. The state has also implemented a paid parking regime for Wailua. I think the implementation, to be honest, I support the paid parking regime there for it's everywhere basically touching Wailua River State Park. So residents are free, the same as you are in Kokee or KA, but tourists have to pay. I don't think there was great communication around it, right? So that if you pay for one parking lot, you get it for all of them. So tourists should be planning their visit to go to all Wailua Falls or Waika Falls and the Wailua Arena. But I think that communication wasn't necessarily done very well. So people weren't planning that out. So they go to Waika Falls and I got to pay all this money to see a single waterfall. And then also the clearing there hadn't been done very well. So the viewpoint wasn't very good when that paid parking went into effect. They've since cleared it. We're going to ensure that we're doing a better job in ensuring that all those lookouts, people are getting their value from it. And then lastly, Sleeping Giant is also overcrowded. And Sleeping Giant's a trail that I've, no mountain. I've climbed it. My entire life, and I still climb it regularly. A bridge on Kuamo'o Road fell apart 2 years ago and has been unusable. Finally, we were able to get the money in this budget cycle. We have $3 million to repair that bridge and do trail restoration throughout the system. But I think it's really important. I've been pushing to try and making progress on Grow Farm giving. Hopefully the Kalepa access road. So Kalepa is the mountain behind Hanamalu. The state has a big forest reserve on that mountain. 3/4 of that mountain is Dofa State Forest Reserve land. It's a beautiful trail. You can hike over to a point overlooking the Wailua River. It's incredible. But the access point, that road, there's a road that goes up there, is owned by Grow Farm. So we've been pushing to have Grow Farm give that to the state, which would, and then we would include that entire mountain and then all the LA trail system. And I think that would actually, it's not in Wailua, but part of the reason why Sleeping Giant is so overcrowded is because it's the only good hiking trail on this side of the island. So I think getting a second beautiful hiking trail will do a lot to alleviate the overcrowding at Sleeping Giant.
Okay. We're at that point, so we'll just pause for a couple minutes and have quiet, and then he'll be able to log it in on our call. Okay. I think that's a good enough pause. Okay, so we're back now, and we're talking about
conversation with candidate for House Representative District 16, David Hazlebeck, and also current Representative Luke Evslin. I'm going to play a couple of messages from our board. This one first sounds like this.
Aloha. Today's Hawaiian word of the day is La Ho'omana'o, or Memorial Day. On this national holiday, Memorial Day remembers and honors the men and women who died while serving in the United States military. The national moment of remembrance encourages all Americans to pause for 1 minute at 3:00 p.m. local time on Memorial Day, or the last Monday in the month of May. This act of unity honors fallen U.S. service members regardless of where you are or what you are doing. Mahalo mākou I ka po'e I make ma ka oehana koa I kēia la ho'omana'o. We are grateful to those who died in military service on this Memorial Day. Again, today's Hawaiian word of the day is La Ho'omana'o, or Memorial Day.
KKCR's Hawaiian Word of the Day is brought to you by the Ama Olukai Foundation.
How many of us are trying to keep our housing? How many of our friends are struggling? Nobody can afford to live here. Kauai Community Radio brings you the PAL Kauai Radio Show. PAL Kauai. It means permanently affordable living. It's housing and so much more. PAL Kauai on the fourth Monday of every month between 4 and 6 p.m. Call in. Be a part of the show. Be a part of the solution.
All right, we're back in the booth. And Lay, what are we going to hear coming up? We've got...
We're still talking...
Oh, hold on. You there? Here
yes,
we go.
I'm here. Yes, we're still talking to the representative candidates about the area of Wailua. They have a very big district, actually, and so we kind of broke it up into the various districts, and we're still in Wailua right now.
Is it the biggest district of our population-wise?
It's broken down by population, which is something I didn't really realize, which is why it's kind of broken up the way that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not all of Wailua, for example.
Right.
Like, for example, Cocoa Palms is not in there, but you would think it would be.
So the homesteads, but not the house lots.
Correct, not the house lots, and not all the homesteads. Like on going north on Kamalu, that part of it is not.
Right.
So it's broken up though by the population.
And so we're going to drift to.
Yeah, we're going to pick up again where we were in Wailua still.
Right, and then from Wailua head to.
Yeah, then we're going to head to Hanama after that.
And talk a little bit about the airport as well on that segment of our show.
Yes.
So we'll take a break at the top of the hour in about 20 minutes and then finish up this second segment. And then during the 5 to 6 hour we'll get the last part of the conversation. We will open the phone lines up at 826-7771. You can call in, talk story, let us know, and we'll put you on the air if you so desire when the interview concludes, and it's going to start right now.
Areas and hiking paths and all that. David, would you like to speak up on that topic?
Sure. So quality of life is something that's extremely important to me, and protecting the quality of life for residents is extremely important. I really believe that we need to keep Kauai, and I think that, like Luke said, opening up another trail in that area would be great. I fully support that idea. I love that idea. I hadn't heard it until just now, but absolutely love it. Another one is where tourists are allowed to cross up at Opaika'a Falls. That road right there was just recently repaired. They just reinforced the mountain right there. And if that road goes out, man, that's going to be devastating to everybody up in Wailua homesteads. And so personally, I think we need to look at if that crossing should still be allowed for walking. If we were to fix up the parking lot that's just a little bit down the hill from there and clear out the trees, I think you could have a great view of the river still from that side, but it would eliminate a lot of the stopping and starting. And when you look at physics, stopping and starting on a road has a lot more impact on the road than if a car is just driving straight through. And so if we're able to eliminate all those stops and starts from people walking across, I think that'll really help with the longevity of that road and making sure that we don't end up in a situation where all of a sudden the state has to fix the road and Wailua is stuck driving all the way through Kapaia for who knows how long. I mean, look how long it takes to fix the Wailua Bridge.
Oh.
So it's, something that I would be interested in looking at.
Yes. And speaking of that, and also back to what Luke was talking about with the Opaika'a viewing, and that when they implemented that, the weeds were so high. I go over there every day, right? And not only that, the area where you could see, they had to walk out onto the highway, and it was dangerous, very dangerous. And then it just drops off. People don't realize that. So fortunately now that's been addressed. But I was wondering then, because it is monitored, it just means if you go after hours, if you go after quitting time at 4:45 or 5 o'clock, no problem, no pay. And I guess weekends too, right? Because there's no one to monitor it during those times. Is that right? As far as the monitoring?
There should be somebody there on the weekends.
Really?
And so a lot of it is going to be honor-based, the same as if you go to the Waimea Canyon or, Kaua lookouts. There's a sign that says non-residents pay. There's a little pay station there. I believe they have one roving monitor for the Wailua River State Park. But up in Kokee, they've had, a lot of success. I think I've heard something like upwards 80-90% of people are paying. So I think most people are going to do the right thing, even if they're there at a time when there's nobody monitoring it.
That's good. And just you talking about stopping right at that bridge, because I watched that being fixed, and that's scary. I mean, it was crumbling. The thing was crumbling. I hope that the rappelling down and shooting it with concrete is going to fortify it enough, because that's pretty scary. That's a very big drop off. It's, I don't know. I hope the experts know exactly what they're doing over there. I really do. Jade, did you have another question you'd like to pose?
Yes. So Kauai is very different from the mainland, and it is even different from our neighboring islands like Oahu. So on the state level, how would we balance out ideas and suggestions that, oh, this is working in some other place, it should be adopted in Kauai, it worked in Oahu, worked on the Big Island. How do we balance that? Because there is some benefit to, trying things that have worked in other areas, but how do you balance not creating new problems because we're not exploring enough local solutions or engaging with enough local voices before bringing, things from another place that might have been successful, but there's no way to know if it's going to be successful in Kauai.
Jump in, whoever wants to take that.
Anyone that's ready.
I'll just say quickly, the Hanalei initiative has been extremely successful up north, and I know that they're looking at ways that we can implement that in other parts of our island. And so I think first we need to, once we look at something that's worked someplace else, we need to look at it critically to see if it's already been implemented somewhere else on the islands, and even more specifically here at home on Kauai. And if it has, then look deeper at, okay, is it working for us actively? I think will help a lot. Shuttle systems are something that are used on the mainland as well. And so that is one example that did work really well. That I'm really proud of how they're doing up there.
Shuttle as in like a hop on, hop off trolley sort of arrangement?
Those are great too. Yeah. But the one up there is basically you get your reservations and they take you to the end of the road from a few different points. And so
that shuttle.
Pick up at a few different points in order to get to one final destination.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
The North Shore of Oahu is facing that dilemma as well. And I think they're looking at borrowing that concept to be on the
exactly. And so there's places that I'm sure the other islands have done things that has been done on the mainland that hasn't been done here, and we can look at them and see, okay, can we do that and implement it in a way that will be able to keep Kauai how we like it, or will it really impact Kauai in a negative way?
Yeah. Well, the big difference is that it's end of the road. On North Shore of Oahu, you can come up from the other side. So it's hard to control, really.
Theirs is a bit different. So.
Yeah. But it's similar about the rocks falling down from Waimea. We have a similar thing up on the North Shore. Luke, did you want to address Jade's question?
Yeah, I think David answered it well, and I think he was I think he was right to point out Hanalei Initiative and the work that they're doing on the North Shore. Some of that was borrowed from what other places are doing in terms of shuttle systems, and then trying to adapt it here. And I should have mentioned it when we were talking about the Wailua corridor, but a really integral thing that we've been working on in coordination with the county is the East Kauai Mobility Hub. Hanalei Initiative is also central to this effort, which is to try and create a mobility hub essentially around like the Coconut Marketplace, where there'll be shuttles from the airport to transport visitors into there, and then a localized shuttle system to get people to their hotels, possibly some offsite car rental there. The idea being like we don't want everybody to get off the plane and then rent a car and contribute to the traffic back and forth through that corridor. So we can get them there in shuttles. And the state, we just, I believe there's $500,000 allocated to the East Kauai Mobility Hub through the Green Fee program. This is just outside of our district. Speaker Nakamura was really instrumental in helping secure those fundings and support the project. But from a broader perspective, like, yeah, that's like the work that we do, right? If everything that, if everywhere was the same, we could just like, we could get rid of state and county governments and just have one federal government that adopts policy for everywhere and we could solve everything. But no, everywhere is very different. And that's why we have this sort of localized system of control. So the job of a legislator or of a council member is to constantly be looking, right, here are the problems in our community, look at how other places have solved these problems, look at what's working and what's not working, and then try and adapt it to our local community. Some things are going to work, some things aren't. Like clearly we're not going to build, 20-story or even 10-story towers in the center of Līhu, even though that's like clearly part of the solution for, around rail on Oahu. We should be building incredibly high density. But we don't want to adopt that exact thing for Līhu. But from a, bigger picture, like we know from overwhelming evidence from around the country that like by not building housing, we are exacerbating the housing crisis significantly. And that by building more housing, we can reduce the cost of housing. So like we know that, and then how do we adapt that to our local community is the hard work of being a legislator, is to figure that out.
And do you all, you mentioned Nadine Nakamura, do you all work collaboratively usually in the various districts?
Yeah. One of the best parts about being in the legislature is that we have just this like incredible leadership team in place in the legislature. Not me, I'm the junior guy, right? But we have Speaker Nakamura, who represents Wailua River through, Haena. And the speaker is the most powerful person in the Hawaii State House of Representatives, like by far. She appoints all the committee chairs, and she is an incredible leader and an incredible individual and an incredible like policy wonk and an incredible advocate for Kauai. And then for the Senate, we have Senate President Kochi, who, is a senator for all of Kauai. And so we have, both of the top positions in the Senate and in the House occupied by Kauai folks. And then Representative Morikawa is actually our majority floor leader. So she's also a member of leadership, and she's an incredibly well-respected member of the legislature. She's anti-D to most people. And so I came into this, just like, I think, well-liked leadership structure that was existing. And there's so much that I have continued to learn from them.
Yeah, Kauai is very strongly represented these days. That's beautiful. And then it'd be kind of remiss not to talk at all about cocoa palms. And I know it's not in this specific district, but are any pieces of it included, or it's completely not? Not just hotel, but then there's another whole section behind.
I can go first. So it's actually entirely not in the district. It's the right side of the road as you go up that road would be of Speaker Nakamura's district. The left side is our district, but the Wailua River State Park is in our district, right? And I think conversations around the future of cocoa palms really do involve the state park. And I know that the county is going through their own process right now, and that has all been executive session. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. But I think there's always going to be the representative from District 16 is going to be involved in the future of cocoa palms, no matter what happens. And if it gets built as a hotel, then we are going to be helping work to alleviate, traffic concerns through that area. If it gets incorporated into the state park, then certainly there'll be a lot of work on that front to incorporate it into the state park. Again, this is largely county because it deals with building permits that were issued by the county.
Yes.
And I think the future of those permits is really what's going to determine what happens on that site. But I think the legislative delegation is certainly there to help support the county in whatever direction they end up going. And if no hotel gets built there, then I would certainly be an advocate of trying to incorporate that into the state park.
Right. Okay. Did you want to comment on cocoa palms, David?
No, I think Luke and I are on the same page with that one.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm also interested about where it's Hawaiian Homelands, where across from currently the Hilton Garden Inn, and it looks like heiau or some things are going on there. What's happening there exactly?
I can answer that as well. So that's Malai Heiau. That's Mason Chalk has really taken champion being a steward for that area. They actually just got GIA funding, which is state grant and aid funding, to help continue or help support them in their restoration efforts there. I think most of us, right? I didn't even realize there was a heiau there until it got cleared, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. Right now, behind that parcel, so that is part of the state park. They have a stewardship agreement with the state park to manage the heiau. Behind that is DHHL land. In the long run, DHHL does want to do some, ag leases up there and possibly some ag homesteads. We're working on trying to secure water for the Malai Heiau site to ensure that they have, they have no water on site even for watering crops. So we're hopeful that they can do that, but it also sort of just illustrates, like, the Wailua River State Park is this gem of a park, but all of the pieces are so disconnected. Right? You have the heiau, you have across the street also another heiau, you have the river itself, you have the marina, which is this aging marina which needs a ton of restoration work, which is also, the architecture in there. It's this incredible spot.
It is. It's a cool place. I really like that place from long ago. Yeah.
It is, and my hope, Puhi Canoe Club is trying to been getting a long-term lease there to have their canoe club be within there, and so that's one of the challenges: get them on site, figure out how to activate that spot more, but also, like, the marina itself is getting silted in, so at some point there's going to need to be a multi-million-dollar dredging project if we want to continue having barge operations on the river. Then you have across the street, you have the boat ramp, then you have Fern Grotto at the end of the river, you have Uluvehi Falls at the end, right? So there's all these, like, incredible points, but it's also disconnected. So I've been talking to state parks for years about the idea we got to do some type of master planning process to try and figure out a way to just better integrate all of those aspects of the park, which we have not gotten to yet. Yeah,
because people don't even know it's all connected. They don't know they could park somewhere and just walk, which is beautiful. It could be a nice experience. Yeah.
And also residents, I think, are largely disconnected from it, right? How many residents have been to the Fern Grotto? Probably, less than 10%, it would be my guess.
I have. Jade has.
I've broken into there. Like, we used to paddle down there when the barges weren't there. But anyway, it's incredible, and I love that river. I've, again, spent just years and years and years paddling on that river and want to figure out ways to make it more accessible to the public.
And on that topic, what's the take on water skiing there? I've seen motorboats with water skiing out there. What's the deal with that? I would think that would be kind of disruptive. Is that acceptable? I don't know. People that...
so it's allowed as long as the boat's under a certain length. It's all determined by boat length there.
Okay.
I believe it's 20.5 feet, I want to say. It might be 19.5.
No restrictions on speed or wake or any of that?
I'm sure that I'm not a licensed boat operator, so
it
I'm
just
not
seemed out of place seeing that. I just thought, well, that doesn't seem, but
but no, it is legal to wakeboard or boil behind a boat or water ski tube.
Yeah.
And I can add a little bit. Presumably there's rules somewhere regarding speed and size, but I get a lot of complaints as a representative, and I have never heard a complaint about the water skiing on the river. I think that they generally tend to do it in a respectful manner. I've heard lots of complaints about too many kayaks on the river, but water skiing I haven't heard complaints. So I think whatever they're doing, they're probably doing it approximately right.
Okay. Well, that's good. And then what other sorts of complaints are you hearing mostly from people in Wailua, other than the ones that we've talked about? Because I'm sure there's quite a few.
Well, just last week, actually, I drove down Kumo, saw a couch on the side of the road down at the end of there, or maybe a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And then that night, I got an email from a constituent also being like, "What? There's this huge couch on the side of the road." So that's the kind of thing that we deal with, trying to route that couch to get properly taken care of. And it was properly taken care of. There is, unfortunately, an abandoned Nissan Leaf at the top there, which there's been issues with Puhi Metals in not accepting EV batteries because they're extremely difficult to ship off of the island. And so that's something that we continue to work on, and that I've been in ongoing discussions with the transportation committee chair on Oahu and trying to figure out ways that we can address this, because obviously having electric cars sit abandoned on the side of the road for a prolonged period of time is not a good answer.
No.
So, I think those are the two most recent complaints that I can think of from the area.
How about you, David? What complaints are you hearing?
I mostly just hear the big ones that we've talked about already. Since I'm not the representative. Yeah, exactly. The Wailua Bridge, the traffic.
Is that ever going to get complete, do you think? The Wailua Bridge?
I think so. I hope so.
We hope so. Yeah, timeline. Who knows? What is the holdup? Is it funding? Is it what?
I believe they have the funding for it. Last I saw, they're supposed to finish it up relatively soon compared to how long they've been working.
Wow, that's general. That's a very general answer, but I guess.
Yeah, what the year was, Luke may know off the top of his head, but
yeah, it's certainly behind schedule. Initial delays, I think, were around permitting, the difficulty of permitting something of that magnitude, and then I think probably a number of probably storm-related delays, and then contractor delays, and that there's a lot of work for too few contractors to do right now in terms of infrastructure. But I can't speak specifically to exactly what the newest deadline is.
Right, and not to mention in that area, Ibi Kupuna very likely be encountered, which
and it's also worth stating, like, it's a gigantic project, even though it doesn't look like it, because the deck's not getting replaced. But to replace each of those piers is just wild and an amazing feat of sort of engineering there.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, moving on to Hanama Ulu now. How, unless you had a question relating there, Jade, did you want to ask another question? I was going to move to the Hanama Ulu concerns.
We can focus on the questions, and then I can. So, because mine is going to deviate.
Okay. So in Hanama Ulu, that would include the airport, right? Okay. So airport impacts, older plantation era housing, workforce concerns, flooding and drainage, and infrastructure, all those things. So I know that there's flooding and infrastructure issues with Hanama Ulu. What improvements should be prioritized there, or take whatever you think is a priority? Who wants to go first on that one? I know the airport's a big hot topic at this moment in time.
I can go first if you want.
Okay.
So another big hot topic in that area is the Amazon facility that's going in, the 1 acre building that.
Conversation with Representative Luke Evslin and his challenger, David Hazlebeck. Luke and David are running for the House Representative District 16 seat, which is Wailua, Hanamalu, Kapaia, Līhu, Puhi, and portions of Omau. We'll carry on the conversation during our second hour, but I want to let you know you are listening to Kauai Community Radio, Radio KKCR Hanalei, KAQA, Kilauea, K224CQ, Anohola, and K205 FM, Honolulu, streaming worldwide at www.kkcr.org. And this PAL Hawaii radio show is made possible by KKCR sustaining members in partnership with... Where'd we go? Uh-oh. Right there. Horses are good company. Hallelujah. Second Saturdays, KauaiVotes.org.
Horses Are Good Company, a Southside boutique with a curated selection of local style attire, vinyl records, and a variety of indoor-outdoor supplies. Horses Are Good Company on Papalina Road, across from the Kalaheo Inn. More information at 808-378-2116 or horsesaregood.com.
Halelihue presents the Second Saturdays Night Market from 4 to 8 p.m. on Crest Street in Līhu. Kauai locals and Malihini can enjoy locally made crafts, food, and entertainment. Website is downtownlihue.com. Mahalo Halelihue for supporting this program with this underwriting message.
And I do have one more to go. And I'm going to play it right now from our good friends at Kauai Votes, KawaiiVotes.com. I know they're here. I just saw them. Here we go.
Support for this KKCR program comes from KawaiiVotes.org, plain language, neurodivergent friendly voter information for Kauai residents. Candidate profiles, election dates, and registration guidance for the 2026 primary and general election. KawaiiVotes.org. Thank you, KawaiiVotes.org and Fidelitas LLC for supporting civic engagement and Kauai Community Radio.
Oh, yes, indeed. Mahalos for supporting Kauai Community Radio. I want to play this as well.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily represent those of KKCR, its management, staff, or underwriters.
All right, and mahalos for supporting Kauai Community Radio. We'll get back to our conversation with Representative Luke Evslin and his challenger, David Hazlebeck, as we discuss the issues for District 16. Leigh, any thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yes, also joining us is our guest co-host is Jade Obayuana, who is our Chief Operating Officer at PAL Hawaii.
Thank you for that. And we'll resume the conversation, which was held on Friday, midday. And thanks to technology, we're playing it for you today on our Monday Mixplate PAL radio show.
Who knows how they'll operate? That's been a big concern from a lot of people I've heard from. But the other issue that I think will impact that area significantly is what happens with the Makai side of the highway, Hanama. They're looking at doing a 1,200 plus unit build out right there. And so depending on where that goes, I think that'll dictate a lot of the infrastructure that happens around Honolulu. And so if that goes in, they're obviously going to have to address traffic in a significant way, unless, of course, we all convince the people that move there to only jump on the bike path or bus. But so traffic is a big one I see coming up in the pipeline. Less of an issue right now because with the contraflow, they've done a good job at getting it down to the highway. And then it does rain a ton right there. My algae farm is right on the other side of the hill from Honolulu, right there in Kapaia. And so we have more water land in our ponds than we have evaporate from our ponds. So there's net negative evaporation right there in a given year. And so there is definitely a lot of rainfall that comes through right there. I just walked the Mauka side of Honolulu recently going door to door, and I did it in the rain a couple of days. There wasn't a whole ton of bad flooding in that area, at least. The thing that more frustrated people was that every house has a bunch of cars and they overflow into the streets. And so trying to come up with a solution where people have places to park, but also can use the streets as a two-way street instead of a one-way street, because that's what they've practically turned into there, is an issue that I think we need to address.
It's back to housing again. You have multi-generations living in homes in Hanama.
It is. Yep. A lot of it ties into housing.
3 jobs and everyone needs a vehicle.
Yep.
It is a real thing. It continuously comes back to housing. You mentioned 1,200 units. Is that a development, an affordable development? Who's doing that?
I don't believe they've published how many of the units would be affordable yet. I know that G7 from Oahu came over and did a community meeting. It was a preliminary meeting, so it's the very first of many, many meetings, I'm sure, where the public will have input. But they came over and hosted that and just introduced the project to the community. But it's a California developer that's looking at putting in a little over 1,200 units, I believe.
So it'll probably be just a small number of affordable in the parameters that we've?
I imagine they'll stick to whatever the mandated minimum is at the time. That's
so it's
typically
a for-profit company. Okay. Luke, do you know anything about that 1,200 unit project?
Yes, not much more than David knows. They are looking at deed restricting a significant component of those. I've heard 60%. So deed restricting meaning that they can only be occupied by local residents, and you'd have to be living in Hawaii to qualify to buy one. But this is, pretty early on in the planning stage. There'll be lots more community meetings and community input as this thing goes through its process. I think for Honolulu Town right now, it's an interesting place in that it's right adjacent to Līhu Town Core, probably a 5-minute drive, and yet it's relatively affordable. It's probably the most affordable housing, maybe the most affordable housing on all of Kauai. And part of that is, and I'm going to borrow a phrase used by our, the planning director, Kaina Hall, is that we have this, we've created a black market for housing on on Kauai, meaning we have created the incentives for people to build illegal housing, because we've made it so hard to build legal housing, right? So when we have a lot of these units in Honolulu and elsewhere adding on, additional rental units, and building, maybe backyard type ohana units, illegally, part of the reason they're doing that is just because it's so incredibly difficult to do it legally, right? And they're doing it by necessity. A lot of this is going to be multi-generational families, and that's the way that they're affording to live there. And so I think, one, we need to be cognizant of that. Two, we need to be very, very careful then around trying to regulate our way around that, right? It would be a disaster if the county went in and said, okay, every single one of these homes has to comply with our zoning code. You need to have all of your off-street parking for all these units, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone in there would, my guess is the vast majority would be illegal, and could be subject to extensive fines, et cetera. So and it's part of why we just have to be careful. And from my perspective, it's wow, we need to make it as easy as possible to comply with these types of things. It shouldn't be so hard to build an ADU. And just for example, when I bought a house in 2018 in Līhu, I moved to Līhu. We bought the house because it had an existing illegal rental unit, and we wanted to make it legal. So right away, we started making that thing legal. Took us 5 months to permit what was an existing rental unit. Already, everything was in place for it. Came back, was almost going to be $18,000 in fees. There's a wastewater connection fee. Initially, we're told we had to pay a water meter fee, all, the building permit fees, and then all those get doubled because we're converting an existing illegal unit. Anyways, so it took 4.5 months. 2.5 of those months was waiting for an address for this unit, which already had our address, and we weren't requesting an additional address to be made for this. So and that was when I was already on the council, right? So and I had the power to go down and sort of say, hey, what's going on here? But it was, I think, until you go through these processes and realize how difficult they are, it's hard to understand it's hard to understand how difficult we've made it. And so my first set of policies when I first came on the Kauai County Council was to eliminate permitting fees for ARUs, as long as somebody commits to renting it affordably for 5 years, under the county's affordable guidelines. So this was after I'd already permitted mine and got mine in place. And then going forward, and I think there's been 70 or so that I've utilized that program. So it's essentially saving up to $20,000. But so things like that, trying to make it as easy as possible for people to legally convert without the government coming in there and sort of saying, you have to convert or we're going to put a fine in place. So that's I think, water is also another major issue for that area. There's been proposed expansions of the surface water treatment plant. A lateral transmission line, has been undergoing litigation for years. And by blocking that transmission line, which allows for extended, more water, essentially what we're doing is saying we can no longer build much housing in Līhu, and we're forcing all the development to happen in outlying areas, which from an environmental perspective, I don't understand, because it means we're forcing everybody into these lengthy commutes to and from Līhu, which is, more and more carbon emissions, more and more traffic for everybody else. So we need to solve the water issue by ensuring that they can, put in that lateral transmission line and expand the surface water treatment plant.
Focusing back to the airport, what are we hearing, you all, from your constituents? What kinds of things are people talking about with the airport? Because, we pass by, we see the dust screens, we see all this cleared land. What's coming? I mean, what are you hearing, people's concerns?
So David went first last time. I can jump in on this one. That construction right now is just extending the runway. I believe it's an extra 1,000 feet. The runway has not been FAA compliant for a very long time. So it's to make it FAA compliant to be long enough. I actually have pushed for the dust fences and for, especially during last summer when it was pretty dry, there was a lot of dust around the Hui. David probably experienced it on his own house also, but we had a lot of dust, we had to wash our kids' clothes off of their shelf weekly because they were getting so dusty. So dust concerns from all that construction has been an issue. And I think they're ameliorating it. They're, doing a lot of water remediation and the dust fences went up. Another thing I've been pushing for is to do a, possibly, I don't know if it would work and we're still in discussion, but plant a barrier like Norfolk pine or something on the backside of there. Because fumes from the runway can extend all the way to the neighborhood that David and I live in. And it's something, I got a citizen petition last year or 2 years ago from people concerned about those fumes. I can certainly smell it in my house. So just ways to try and ameliorate that. The big overarching concern around the airport is, when there was the previous master planning process was going on, they essentially came to Kauai and said, we're going to add all these gates, right? And they didn't say that, they said we have to add all these gates, right? Like federal law requires that we do a planning process to add these gates. And for good reason, not everybody, but lots of people, including myself, were like, no, that's not a good idea.
Exactly.
And don't just come to us and say you're going to add all these gates, right? So, Governor Ige, to his credit, essentially stopped that process, said, well, heard the community's concerns and said, we're not going to do this. And so now they're going through that same master planning process in a much more sensitive way. I think hearing the community's concerns around not wanting to add gates. And to be clear, like the issue around the gates is that is kind of our pinch point right now for for the number of visitors that are coming to Kauai. We have a tourism strategic plan since 2018, essentially has been saying that we are over capacity, that we have a visitor count capacity of about 25,000 daily arrivals or daily visitors, and that our count, is often in the 30,000. And then once we go above 25,000, visitor satisfaction goes down and resident frustration goes up. And worst of all, like visitors start spending less money. So you sort of get into this negative curve where like you have more visitors and they're spending less money overall. So the goal is like, stay in that 25,000 under range, attract sort of higher spending visitors, and residents can be happy and visitors can be happy. And if we allowed for unlimited gate expansion, we would just blow right through that figure, right? So the ways that we have to control it are the number of gates and then also the number of visitor accommodations on the island. So I certainly don't support expanded gates. They're going through that master planning process right now. And
rental cars, if they were limited. It's kind of like Switzerland. Yep. They just they're taking a vote to cap their population at 10 million. And they're at 9 point something right now to cap their population. Can you imagine? And they're voting on it this coming election. That would be interesting. Regarding the airport, so I heard Amazon is doing something. I also heard it's just going to be a big industrial center of some sort. Is all that true? David, do you know something about that too?
Yeah, I went to the planning meeting that was held for the airport and for that build out there. It is going to be mostly industrial. They're talking about still doing a hotel in that area. So there's a hotel right next to the airport, especially for business travelers from that come over for just really short stays. Amazon, as of right now, everything I've heard is that it's still moving forward with a 1 acre facility. There's also going to be a massive rental car facility where all of the rental cars can move to that location. I don't know how necessary that is personally, but I'm with Luke that we need to make sure that we don't have too many tourists here.
Right. That is a big pressure point.
Yeah,
there's not even enough parking right now. You go to the airport, the lot's full. They may or may not pay attention to it, and too bad if you've got your flight to catch and the lot's full. Then what do we do? And I heard a lot of Ubers are going in there. Not Uber, Turo, because they want to avoid the fee for the van that is super convenient. I don't understand.
Yeah, they're in talks with Turo. I know. to have some space in that rental car facility.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's still a long ways out for
Yeah.
having it built and who's going to actually be operating in there.
Yeah, what's the total acreage of that whole complex of Amazon and industrial and hotel, all that? What is that? It's huge, isn't it?
I forget what it is off the top of my head. I know that the area that the airport was going to use was about 7 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I'm not sure about the total acreage though.
Sure going to change the nature of the drive from Līhu to Kapaia.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay, did you have a question?
Could I just respond real quickly as far as industrial space? Like,
Yeah.
I share David's concerns around the rental car facility. Like, if you look at like Maui has this massive rental car facility now, like we don't want that. And I think, my guess is most people don't want that. Maybe a slight expansion of like to make more room for resident parking in the existing parking lot, could be valuable, but certainly not like a multi-story Conrack is what they call them.
Oh no.
I've pushed back against that concept. I've heard Speaker Nakamura also push back against it. I don't think right now there's actual plans to do that big of a facility. That's one thing. As far as the industrial space goes, this is something, and I take heat for it, but I support industrial space there. I have a small manufacturing business on Oahu. We always wanted to move that back to Kauai, and we could never find the industrial space to do it. We have a huge shortage of industrial land on Kauai. Part of why is there was a large amount of industrial zoned out by Port Allen, which got converted into a solar farm, which is great. I support a solar farm out there, but it meant we just didn't have enough industrial, right? So of that land next to the airport, they sold out to local businesses like very, very fast. And they, I think kind of quietly put out the offer to the local community first. Amazon might be the only or one of the only, sort of non-local things going on in that space. And then as far as the hotel goes, my understanding is that that's pretty conceptual for across the street. I really support, I say it all the time, I support my housing on Kauai, especially in the right places. I don't support more hotel developments. And I want to be clear on that front. So I am hopeful, if there's limited commercial space and certainly housing across the street, I think that's a great win. But I'm hopeful that there's not going to be a hotel there.
Right. Oof. Me too. We're going to just take a little pause, break. Okay, that should be long.
Your radio KKCR, Honolulu, KAQA, Kilauea, and you've been enjoying a previously taped, recorded conversation between candidates for House District 16, Luke Evslin. He's the current member of House, he's the, if you will, incumbent, and he is facing a challenge this, I guess it'll be August for during the primary election, and Luke's challenger is David Hazlebeck, and we'll return to our interview very shortly. I'm going to play one message right now. I'll make sure I play it. Everybody hears it. It sounds like this.
Aloha. Our ocean can change quickly, sometimes from calm to dangerous in just moments. Powerful north and west swells bring strong rip currents, shifting sandbars, and heavy shore breaks. Beaches that seem calm at first glance can turn hazardous fast. Please be safe, swim at lifeguarded beaches, and use the buddy system. Check in with lifeguards for safety information before entering the water, and pay attention to posted warning signs. Even experienced ocean goers should know Hawaii has some of the most powerful surf in the world, shaped by deep ocean bottoms and steep shorelines. Our lifeguards are here for your safety, skilled, trained, and proud to serve our community. Please ask us for advice when visiting our beaches. One conversation could save a life. This has been a deep dive into water safety on KKCR with Ocean Safety Bureau's North Lieutenant Chad Listman. Mahalo and aloha.
Yes, indeed. Mahalo for that, Chad. Appreciate the word to the weary out there. Be careful. Never turn your back on a wave. We're going to resume our interview, and this next section, Lay, the last one, what are we going to cover in the final 30?
Well,
that's 25 minutes
left.
Yeah,
they're still speaking about the airport, because Hanama is a pretty big district as well, and the airport's a hot topic. Then we're going to move on to Puhi and Līhu, and there's housing going up there, and also shopping centers and that.
There we go. And phone lines will be opening up here, 826-7771, or give us a call, 826-7774. Leave us a message. Let us know, what do you think? And we'll return back to our candidates.
Okay, coming back, we are here. Okay, coming back, we are here with our District 16 candidates, Representative Luke Evslin and David Hazlebeck, and we are on KKCR Radio. We were talking about the various areas in the District 16, and now let's move to the Puhi and Līhu corridor, which has traffic, commercial growth, workforce housing, and infrastructure strain. So Puhi and the Līhu corridor continue to grow commercially and residentially a lot and quickly. What concerns you most about that growth trajectory? David, do you want to start?
Sure. So my personal major concerns, I would say, are sewer, without a doubt, is a big one. Water, like Luke had already mentioned earlier, we need to fix our water supply issues right now. Parking right now is a big one. I know that there's a big push to have more density in Līhu, but when I've been talking to people throughout that area, they don't want it to turn into Puhi, where it's just every single car, or Hanama, where it's every single car is partially in the street. Another big one right now is the height of buildings. They're building the 4-story building right across from the old county building. Right. And people are concerned about that one and just the height of it in general, and potentially trying to make the rest of Rice Street built out a little bit more is a concern of mine as far as how high we go. I definitely don't think we should be going above 4 stories. And then also just the major sell-off of land right now. For their Grow Farm just sold a large chunk of land for homes, and that land was partially ag land, and so I'm tracking that one closely to see how many of those stay as more small agricultural lots with homes versus just a full build out of homes.
Where is that chunk? The Grove?
It's right behind Isenberg Park.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I believe it's about 130 acres that they sold to DHH.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And they sold it to
DHHL.
Oh, okay.
So,
well,
which I'm very supportive of more Hawaiians being in homes. I think that they've gone very slow at getting people into homes, and they could move much faster, considering that they're part of the government in a way, and that they should be able to make things move a bit faster than even industry can move. But
no, it's complicated.
Even critical where we put them, in my mind.
Yeah, even if you get the land, though, that complexity is overwhelming for the average individual.
It's true.
Luke, did you want to chime in on that question?
Yeah, so I said it earlier, but Līhu has 60% of the jobs and 25% of the housing, right? It is like the root of our traffic problems on Kauai. So I really, really, really strongly believe that we need to fix that imbalance. We should have approximately the same number of homes and jobs. And if you look at our Kauai general plan, right, that's like the primary thrust of the general plan is to say essentially, in order to preserve the rural atmosphere of the rest of Kauai, Līhu is the only town that should have, close to transformational development, right? Or transformational change, basically. Right. And so I do support that current 4-story building going up by the old Central Pacific Bank building. That's going to be 64. These are light tech units, meaning that they are deeply affordable, with commercial space below. There's an existing 4-story building like 300 yards away. This is within walking, literally like a 2-minute walk, well, maybe 5-minute walk, right, of like 1,000 jobs, right? The county building, there's a ton going on right in that area, Wilcox Elementary School. And so I think that's like the perfect place for a 4-story building. And just that little strip right there, right? If we had more 4-story buildings, like I think that could actually do a lot to alleviate the housing crisis and reduce development pressure in other places of Kauai. And I think it could do a lot also to help revitalize Rice Street itself, right? Like the I'm spacing on the name, the brewing company, which went out of business, a few months ago.
Kauai Brewing Company,
Yeah, which is, is so unfortunate, like this incredible place, which brought so much vibrancy to Līhu town core, right? You drive by on like a Friday night and everywhere else on Rice Street is like dark and dead. And then, there was a ton of vibrancy around there. And unfortunately, they couldn't make it work. And I think part of the ways to make it work is just to have more, residents living in close proximity to there. So I think, things like 4-story buildings down just that Rice Street corridor are part of the housing crisis, again, because it helps ensure that we're not pushing development into our outlying areas. And both Dave and I live right off of Rice Street, right? Kind of right in the heart of that. And I think the county's done a lot infrastructure-wise to try and prepare for this.
Right.
The Tiger Grant project, which did a lot for the Hardy Street and Rice Street areas, it really did make it viable to get around much easier without a car right in the Līhu town core area. So that's one thing, but at the same time, right, we should be balancing that with better land stewardship around Līhu. The state, we did just close on 1,000 acres of agricultural land behind Kalepa Ridge. So this is land that was owned by Grove Farm. If the state hadn't bought it to preserve for agricultural use, this probably would have gotten split up into like gentlemen's estates, which is just the worst form of density. You maybe have like these 5-acre ag estates, which are not producing any ag. So at the same time as we can sort of densify Līhu town core, preserving these outlying agricultural areas to ensure that we're growing food, I think is really important for the Līhu area. Lastly, wastewater, as David said, is a big issue, and water is a big issue. So we need the funding for the infrastructure, which is part of why I mentioned the bond financing in the beginning. Like better tools for financing infrastructure are critical. I was championing a bill this year which would have allocated $60 million dedicated funding to DHHL and $40 million for infrastructure. In Hawaii, we don't have a dedicated infrastructure source or DHHL. Part of why DHHL isn't producing the housing that they should. Part of the reason I'm such a champion for that is to help upgrade the infrastructure around the Hui town core and to help ensure that they can build housing out at Itzenberg, because I do think unfortunately the DHHL parcels, the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's parcels on Kauai are all in pretty far outlying areas, Waimea and Honopepe and Anahola. And we need some right in the center of town where again 60% of people work.
Right. Well, that's good. And also little entity like Halelihue has helped to add a little vibrance to the downtown area and the food trucks, and there seems to be a lot more action going on down there, which is a good thing in general.
Yeah, and I'll say, sorry, like Rainbow Joe's, and there's Bluebird Coffee, and there's Hot Coffee. There's all these coffee shops coming up. It's like the coffee capital of Kauai, which is great. I just hope that, these places can remain and thrive. And I think to do so, right, we need more people living close by.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Yes, and to infill some of the commercial areas and have residentials on top. I know with the Tiger Grant originally, because I was involved in the panel and they were studying it and had the people from coming in outside, and we walked the whole area. And so included, I think, in your guys' district is the shopping center too, Kukui Grove, right? Is also in there. Mm-hmm. And then the big development across the street from that, down the road a little ways. That's a big project, it looks like, for housing.
And that's also a LIHTC project, right? So those are also going to be deeply affordable units. In addition to the county, the Pualoke project is also deeply affordable units. So a lot of essentially all of the high density development that we're seeing in Līhu is going to be deeply subsidized, deeply affordable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I mean, every bit helps. I mean, PAL, we're doing our best. We're small though, and we can only do little bits at a time, but it really takes the entire community from all different aspects to make this work and to make it become more livable and more affordable. Jay, did you have a question you wanted to pose?
Yes. So thinking about diversifying our economy on Kauai, we have our graduates from high school thinking about their future and several young people thinking about what exists for them, what opportunities exist on the island. So from the state level, with what you're seeing with current trends, Luke, do you have any insight to what industries that young people can look towards? And David, you with your work with LJ, do you have anything that you can encourage young people to think outside the box and outside very more like traditional careers, to be more open-minded to, so that we can attract them to stay on the island, or at least come back when they gain, outside knowledge that there is a space for them here?
Yeah, that's something I struggle. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, right? And like, I feel like if I am successful as housing committee chair, or as my job right now in the legislature means that they could come home, right, when they graduate from college and afford to live on Kauai. Like that is the goal.
And not with dad.
And it's, yes, yeah. And well, we have a rental unit in the back. Maybe they'll end up staying here, but regardless, that they can stay on Kauai.
Right.
And what I'm honestly like terrified of, and truly I think about it, is like I have a lot of nieces and nephews on island also, like that they're going to come back to me and say, hey, you were housing committee chair for whatever, how many years? And like, why is the housing crisis still so bad? So like, that is what drives me to like work relentlessly on this problem. So first, for them to come back, we need cheaper homes. But number two, as far as what industries they should be focusing on, I don't know. I mean, that's a big question mark in the age of AI. Like, what are the industries? And I do think, at least in the near term, like we have so many shortages across so many areas, and especially as anything that requires sort of like hands-on, right? We're always going to need teachers. We have a dire shortage of teachers. I think it's because it's hard to afford a home if you're a teacher, but like, we also have a dire shortage of construction workers. What happened after the 2008 recession was a lot of people, right? The construction industry collapsed essentially. A lot of people left it, and they've been struggling to sort of get the manpower to come back. So I have a business. We build canoes, right? There's a shortage of people who know how to build canoes. So anybody who knows how to can physically build. But we also have doctor shortages on Kauai. There's been a lot of work. The state just got, I believe, and I don't want to be missaying it, but like $1 billion over X amount of years to help subsidize the cost of medical school for Hawaii residents. So, currently there's been the Chan Zuckerberg initiative where people who are committing to work on Kauai can get free medical school. But if that ever fades out, we have this other source of money there that can sort of backfill it. But the reason that, that's there is because we need doctors on Kauai. I've gone through so many PCPs in the last 10 years because it's hard to keep them on Kauai.
And dentists too. It's a revolving door for dentists.
Yeah, and there's a big, as I understand, there's a lot of turmoil in the dentist industry, and that it's small. It's harder to be a sort of a small independent dentist. But a lot of it is like, as a small business owner, I understand like just like the daily crushing stress of having a small business. It is like just by far the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. It never ends. Like the stress of like having to pay payroll and not knowing how you're going to pay payroll and having all these people relying on it and like figuring out how to get a bunch of revenue in a couple of days, like that just kind of never goes away. And we don't always make it so easy as government, right? In the middle of sort of like all of the craziness of having to run a business, we got audited by the unemployment insurance division, and we get insurance audits and all kinds of stuff, audits all the time. But this was like more comprehensive than anything I'd ever had to do. It was like 50 pieces of paperwork, essentially, or not, documentation giving to them over how many years, which was like days of time to comply with this thing, so that they can make sure that we weren't paying any independent contractors like incorrectly. And we are a very, very, very small business. Anyway, so like these types of things, we are making it harder, and the state has to be really, really cognizant about not making it harder to be a small businessman.
Yeah. It ranks high in the most difficult in being a small business owner here on this island, in the islands, in the Hawaiian Islands. And I don't know why that is, because I mean, it's what helps the economy go, really, the small businesses. And then if they're being crushed, then the big businesses come in that come from elsewhere, and then it gets just gobbled up. The mom and pops no longer can afford doing what they do, which is sad, because that's the character of Kauai, really. It's sad to see those things keep happening. That's what I'm wondering about with Amazon taking over. It's going to affect a lot of smaller businesses probably. But
Yeah, that's
Did
the
you?
concerns I've been hearing, and I feel the exact same way. I mean, small businesses are crucial to our economy. They're really the backbone of all of America's economy,
Yeah.
but especially here in our community. And like Luke, my family owns a small business, and so I'm right there with you, man. It's tough, and I get the added pressure of we're also federal contractors. We win competitive research grants, and that's how we operate our research farm here on Kauai. And so we get audited every single year because that's one of the requirements of our contracts. And I'm the one that has to lead those, so I'm very used to having to go through that process. And yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. So,
Well, tell us a little bit about that algae business. I don't understand too much about what that's about. Can you briefly describe?
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, so we operate an 8 wet acre farm here where we grow protein and oil, basically, is the products that come out of it. And all the work we do here on island is for research, mostly funded through Department of Energy and USDA grants. And with algae farming, it's high-tech farming. You produce a lot more per acre than any other type of farm product can do. And so the amount of protein and oil you can produce with the same amount of water and the same amount of land is at least 10 times more than anything else you can grow. The cost to this point has just been, or the main reason it hasn't been adopted worldwide to this point is the cost is too high. And so we've done research here since 2010. My dad had the farm built. Late Senator Inoue was instrumental in having the farm built here. And there's a connection to the KIUC power plant where we've been able to capture CO2 out of their stack and feed it to our algae. And so it's probably the best thing you can do for the environment as well. And then because you produce so much more than any other crop, you're able to employ so many more people on the same amount of land as well. And the jobs vary everything from high school diploma, or not even high school diploma, really. We've had plenty of technicians that have been 16, 17 years old still in high school and get a work permit and are working limited hours, but make it work to try and help their family and really try and set themselves up for success. But so everything from people like that all the way to full PhDs. We've had multiple people that were born and raised here go get a PhD, think, I'm never going to be able to make it back to Kauai. And then they found us and were able to come home. And so I think things like that, where it's high tech research, is a great opportunity for our young kids that are graduating these days, young adults that are graduating high school right now, looking at what kind of jobs are available. I think other jobs that revolve around high productivity are crucial as well. And then essential services like our police force. Talk about a great job. You have opportunity for amazing benefits with our police force. But at the same time, it does come with a lot of stress and just, I mean, you're putting your life on the line every single day, and that's hard to do. Even here on Kauai, you never know what you're going to come across. And I have lots of friends that are police officers here, and they have lots of great days, but there are days that, man, you just don't know what you're going to find. Right. And so, but I think that's still a great opportunity for kids graduating. And I know the police force right now is looking at doing an academy program where you can join straight out of high school and have a good paying job straight out of high school. But then lines you up for success later in life as you turn 21 and are allowed to become a sworn-in officer. It's basically a pipeline for that. And so.
Well, thank you for addressing that. Jade, I think you have one final question, and it has to be a quick one because we're almost at that point. Please go ahead.
Yes, I think the only questions I have for both of our guests is, I know David mentioned in his bio highlights mentorship, coaching, church, and family life. And for Luke, you were born and raised on Kauai and represent a lot of the communities that shaped you growing up here. How does all of this life experiences shape how you intend to lead in the future. And anyone that is ready to share.
Go ahead, Luke. You look ready.
I am thinking this through as you said it, but certainly my primary reason for running is to give back to the community that raised me. I feel like I've gotten so much from this community. And I will say, I'm on Oahu a lot, January through May. We got to be on Oahu basically Monday through Friday. And over that time, you just feel this growing sense of disconnect with the island. And now our session ended 2 weeks ago, so I've been back on Kauai for 2 weeks and back coaching. I coached the 10 and unders at Niamalu Canoe Club, back showing up at community events, back, I sat in a council meeting for a little bit the other day. And it is just it's hard to describe it, but I feel being on Kauai fills my cup. And being part of the community fills my cup, and, seeing my friends again, and being able to coach and because I've gotten so much from Kauai, I want to try and give back as much as I can. So yeah, and it's just the challenge of being a rep is how to balance that when we get stuck on Oahu so often. And it's part of why I try and put back I come back more than any other rep to their neighbor island, by far, especially because I got 2 little kids. But yeah, I love Kauai. I want to do everything that I can for Kauai. I want my kids to live here. I want my nephews and nieces to live here. I want the Kauai that I sort of grew up with and that sense of community to persist for my children. And I do feel I've said it a lot tonight around housing, but the real issue with housing is if we don't solve this crisis, we are going to have no more community. And it's going to be 10, 15 years. It's not that far away. We're just nobody is going to be able to afford to live here unless you inherited your house. Yeah. So that is why I just feel I have this relentless push to try and reduce the cost of housing to ensure that our community can stay. But thank you guys so much for having this conversation. Thank you, David. It was good to talk to you. Thank you, Leilani and Jade. Really appreciate all of it.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. And David, did you want to quickly answer Jade's last query?
Yeah, so I also have little kids. I have a 5, a 3, and a 1-year-old, and like Luke, I want them to be able to grow up and stay here. Although I wasn't born here, I grew up coming here for summers because my dad started the algae farm when I was in high school. And so a lot of my formative years happened here. And so I have a lot deeper ties here than I feel like a typical transplant does. And so as soon as I got married in 2018, I knew I knew well before that we'd be moving here as soon as we were married. And so my wife, Emily, and I moved here right away. And before that, I was in California. I founded an athletics program at a private school while I was in college. And so I've coached many, 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 many teams. I now still coach. I enjoy coaching my son's baseball and soccer. And I feel like with coaching, there's that side of mentorship where you don't get that in everyday life typically. Mm-hmm. And I feel like being a rep is a great opportunity to do that as well, because you have a staff that helps work with you. And I really think that, for me, I have a career that I love in algae farming. I always thought I'd get into politics one day, way down the line, 20, 30 years from now, as a way to give back. But I really feel like our community needs it now. And so who knows what life's going to be like in that far out. And so I said, man, I got to get involved now. And as a rep, I absolutely would be looking at having people in my office that are young leaders that are aspiring to be legislators, because it's not something that I want to make a full career of. I don't think anybody, frankly, should. And so it's something where I can have that mentorship aspect and really help guide the next generation to then lead from there as well. So really looking forward to that aspect.
Well, I thank you both, and especially the idea that both of you are mentors and coaches and are helping groom our young folks and build character, because that really is the essential, I feel, of Kauai. I was born and raised on Oahu. I come to Oahu frequently, but there's that low level of stress underneath. And the minute I arrive back on Kauai, it's like, okay, now I can breathe again, a cup full.
It's an amazing feeling.
Pause and talk story, and nobody gives you stink eye, and it's just a whole different world. So it's a wonderful place to be. And I appreciate both of you sharing your time with us. And we thank you guys very much for everything that you do, and wish you both luck in your campaign. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for hosting. Really appreciate it. And thanks, Luke.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you guys. Bye. Aloha.
Mahalo, Jade.
That's not dead air. That's me hitting the wrong button. I was going to play this and hit that.
Did you know that no matter where you are on Kauai, when you throw something in the trash, it ends up in Kekaha? That's because Kauai's only landfill is located on the west side. The Kekaha landfill receives 260 tons of trash every single day, and in just a few years' time, it will run out of space. By the year 2030, Kauai's only landfill is expected to reach full capacity, leaving us with nowhere to put our waste. While the county thinks of our next landfill solution, it's important to be mindful of what we throw away. 45% of what enters the landfill doesn't have to be there. It can be composted, recycled, repaired, or repurposed. Kauai has tons of great resources for putting waste in the right place, like recycling centers, composting services, repair fairs, thrift stores, and more. Responsible waste management is not just how we extend the life of our landfill. It's also how we care for our communities, care for the land, and care for the generations to come. For a full roundup of resources for diverting waste, visit kkcr.org/onair/opala. This message is made possible by funding from the County of Kauai's Office of Economic Development.
Aloha, this is Derek Kawakami from Līhu, Kauai, and you're listening to KKCR Kauai Community Radio.
All right, here we go. Thanks, Mayor Derek. And on a related note, just to let you know, Councilmember Fern Holland has sent out a notice. There is a meeting that's going to be happening on May 27th. That's Wednesday. And it is a meeting that concerns the Kekaha landfill. I'll just read it. Your landfill, your future. Kauai's only landfill is running out of space. Join the meeting on May 27th and help shape what happens next. The notice goes on to say, please join me on Tuesday, May 27th from, that's Tuesday, May 27th, my bad, 6 to 7:30 p.m. I thought it was on Wednesday.
Yeah,
at
Wednesday
the Kekaha.
is the 27th.
Oh, so I'm reading it wrong. It's the 27th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Kekaha Neighborhood Center. And it's for a community open house on the proposed Kekaha landfill Cell 3 vertical expansion project. And as you know, the Kekaha landfill is the only permitted landfill, and it is expected to reach capacity around the year 2030. And the county's proposed Cell 3 vertical expansion will expand capacity upward within the existing landfill footprint to bridge the gap while a future landfill site at Ma'alo is being planned. This is a critical decision for our island's long-term waste management, and your community voice should be part of it. At the open house, you can get a full update on Kauai's landfill capacity challenges and long-term plans, learn about the upcoming environmental impact statement process, speak directly with county staff and project representatives, and ask questions and share your feedback, as well as enjoy food and refreshments. So this is a meeting that's going to be happening on the 27th of May. That's a Wednesday, although my notice says Tuesday, so I'll have to double check and find out more about the landfill. Lei, any thoughts on our last segment?
Yes, that was really enjoyable to speak with two very knowledgeable people.
Very knowledgeable.
Yeah, who both have strong ties right in the district that they're representing, which I think is a wonderful thing. And I learned a lot from it. So I'm glad that they made themselves available to join us. We did not have call-ins, folks. If you want, there's about 2 minutes left to call in, if you so desire.
We got Sunset Jazz with Richard Fernandez coming right up. So we got Probably time for a call if anyone is so motivated. 826-7771. If you got some news we can use or anything happening in your Ahu Pua'a. Also have a meeting that's happening tomorrow. It is going to be, let's see. Yeah, it says May 26th, so I'm thinking that is tomorrow since today's the 25th.
Right.
This is sponsored by the Hanalei Wainiha Ha'ena Community Association. This meeting is at the Hanalei Neighborhood Center, and it's from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And the topics to be covered are a presentation from the Kauai Department of Water, and there's a question and answer session right after that's going to cover water infrastructure projects planned for our communities, as well as the Department of Water's capital infrastructure needs and rate study. Also, the proposed water rate increase, which, according to the flyer, might rise up to 89% over the next 5 years. Also, they'll be talking about the AT&T, the proposed AT&T Ha'ena cell tower update, as well as the highway Route 580 project update from, or rather 560 project updates, and then any updates on community projects and events, as well as an open forum for community to express their thoughts and concerns. All folks are welcome and invited. That's again tomorrow, May 26th, from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Hanalei Neighborhood Center for a meeting of the Hanalei Wainiha Ha'ena Community Association. So there you go. Lay, any final thoughts, any things
here
you want to mention to keep us healthy and hopeful for the coming?
Hopeful is that, yes, we're coming right along with our homes in Kilauea. We have 3 that are approaching completion. There's a lot of loose ends still that have to be worked on, and we're working also very closely with the county. So anyone has any interest in potentially purchasing a home, either this one, which is very nearing, and probably if you haven't already gotten involved in it, you won't have access to this particular set, but we have other projects. So do look at our website. It's pal-hawaii.org, and please do look at our website. We also have our 2 rental buildings in Kekaha and 1 in Kapaia, where Hoku Foods, Natural Foods is, and our homes up in Kilauea that are closing. We're getting very close. It's such a long process, though. I feel like we've been talking about it, and we have for 8 years. That's how long it's taken.
Right. Well, it's always that way.
Yes, yes. And that's the part that is never really known. Why is it taking so long? But it's pretty exciting now that we're getting this close.
That's that song comes to mind. Anticipation.
Yes, uh-huh.
There we go. Lay, thanks so much for the interview with Luke and David, candidates for House District 16. And mahalo for listening today. Stay tuned. Keep it locked in. Richard Fernandez is here with Sunset Jazz, and I'll be back tomorrow with some council business, some updates on what's going on with some candidates, as well as Wednesday's budget meetings.
And I want to thank Max from Hawaii for coming out here and filming and helping to coordinate, and also to Annie, Radio Annie, who helped line everything up for us. It was awesome. And quickly, she is the only person I've talked to personally who actually felt the earthquake. So if anyone else did, I'd like to know.
Well, keep it shaking and rock on, you people. Stay cool with some jazz. It's coming up. Here we go.
Jazz. Delicious hot, disgusting cold, but always cool with Richard.
Ikapono